All right, diving right into it, December 15th, 2024 was a busy day in the world of cybersecurity.
Yeah, no kidding. A ton to unpack.
Let's start with something pretty alarming, actually.
Okay, yeah, definitely like these zero-day vulnerabilities, you know?
Yeah, the exploits.
Huge problem, especially with that Amnesty International report that dropped today.
Oh, right. That was a big one.
It was. They uncovered a pretty serious Android vulnerability that was being used to target journalists and activists in Serbia. Can you believe that?
No, that's crazy.
It is, and it's being called NoviSpy.
NoviSpy. All right, I'll have to remember that one.
Yeah, definitely one to watch. Amnesty thinks it might be linked to Cellebrite.
Cellebrite. Now, don't they specialize in digital forensics?
Yeah, exactly. Their tools are usually used by law enforcement for stuff like unlocking phones, but,
I can see how that could be misused.
exactly, it's a slippery slope. And Amnesty says NoviSpy can bypass encryption and take data off phones, even turn on cameras and microphones without the user knowing.
Wow, one journalist even thinks his phone got infected during a traffic stop. It's disturbing, this kind of invasive surveillance happening so casually.
It really is, and think about the reach of this thing. It used a Qualcomm vulnerability, which means it could have impacted millions of Android devices before that patch came out in October.
Millions. That's insane. So this is way bigger than just Serbia.
Absolutely, it has global implications for sure.
And speaking of vulnerabilities, we got to talk about those Draytech router exploits.
Oh man, those are bad. Researchers found some undocumented exploits. Could even be a zero-day flaw in there.
And of course, the ransomware gangs are already all over it.
Yeah, as usual, Monstrous Mantis, Ruthless Mantis, and LRVA-15 all using these to hit over 300 organizations so far.
Mostly in Europe and Australia, right?
Yep, and they're deploying some pretty nasty ransomware too. Nokayawa and Quilin, those are serious.
If anyone's listening who's using a Draytech router, seriously, update your firmware like now.
Couldn't agree more. It's a good reminder that we got to be on top of security for all our devices, not just computers and servers.
Routers are often the weak link.
Yeah, definitely an easy target if you're not careful.
Okay, so let's shift to another big story. LKQ Corporation, the auto parts company, got hit with a cyber attack.
Ouch, that's gotta hurt. They're a global giant, and it's been affecting their Canadian operations for weeks.
They're being pretty tight-lipped about the details, but they say they've contained the breach.
Well, that's something at least.
Yeah, but they're definitely leaning on their cyber insurance to soften the financial blow.
That's the standard playbook these days, but, insurance can't fix everything.
Right, like the reputation damage.
Exactly, and the disruption to their operations, that's going to take time to recover from.
LKQ is a perfect example of how no industry is immune to these attacks.
True, it can happen to anyone, and then we've got SRP Federal Credit Union there in the news, too.
They're notifying over 240,000 customers about a ransomware attack. Wow.
Yeah, and this one went on for a while, September to November, so almost 3 months.
That's a long time.
It is, and this group, Nitrogen, they're claiming responsibility, saying they took 650 gigabytes of data.
650 gigabytes. That's massive.
It is. Social security numbers, financial records, the whole works. Nitrogen is a new player on the scene, but they're definitely making a splash.
Not a good kind of splash. Poor SRP is offering a year of credit monitoring, which is a good start.
But it's scary. Think about all the damage that can be done with that data. Those people need to be super careful.
And then we've got the ClearP group. They're back at it again.
Of course they are. Those guys never seem to quit.
This time, they're exploiting vulnerabilities in Clio's file transfer tools, hitting Harmony, VLTrader, and Lexicom.
So they're sticking with what they know.
Yeah, it's like they found their niche file transfer tools, and they're milking it for all it's worth.
Well, there's a new flaw, CVE 2024-55956. It allows unauthenticated file writes in Clio software, essentially a backdoor.
A backdoor. Yikes.
Yeah, not good. And it's similar to their MovieIt attack earlier this year. They're really focused on these systems.
Clio's telling everyone to update to version 5.8.0.24 ASAP. But it makes you wonder, are these tools inherently insecure?
It's a valid question. CleoP keeps hitting them. Maybe there's a systemic issue here.
And maybe vendors need to rethink their security approach altogether.
Yeah, it's a tough one. These tools are essential for businesses. So patching isn't always easy. You risk downtime and disruption.
But the consequences of a breach are way worse.
Absolutely, you're right. Rhode Island found that out the hard way.
Oh yeah, the Rye Bridges benefits system got attacked, and it's a big one.
It is. This system handles SNAP, Medicaid, all those essential services, and it's been taken offline completely.
They found some malicious files, and they're worried about sensitive data being compromised.
Yeah, social security numbers, banking info, that's bad news. And Deloitte, they're the ones managing the system, so.
They're definitely under the microscope right now.
As they should be. This is a major failure. and it's affecting vulnerable people who rely on those services.
It's a scary trend. Seeing these attacks on public services, the impact is huge.
It's not just about data anymore, it's about people's lives.
And then we've got Telecom Namibia. They're taking a stand against ransomware, refusing to pay the ransom.
Bold move, you gotta respect that, but it came at a cost.
It did. The Hunters International Group, they weren't messing around. They leaked a ton of data.
Yeah, personal and financial info, customers, and even high-ranking officials, it's a mess.
Telecom Namibia's CEO, Stanley Shanapenda, he's saying no negotiations with cybercriminals, but
It's a tough call. It's exposed some gaps in Namibia's cybersecurity laws. Their Data Protection Act isn't really being enforced.
now it's a national security crisis. President Ngolo Mbumba is involved. It's a big deal over there.
It shows how these attacks can have far-reaching consequences, even at a national level.
Okay, let's talk about some industry news. Arctic Wolf bought Silence from BlackBerry.
Interesting move. That's big news in the cybersecurity world.
Yeah, the price tag was $160 million plus stock equity.
That's a far cry from the $1.4 billion BlackBerry paid for it back in 2018.
Ouch, that's a big drop in value.
It is. It shows how quickly things can change in this industry, but Arctic Wolf is clearly looking to boost their XDR platform.
Yeah, integrating Silence's AI-driven endpoint protection is a smart move.
They're aiming for that comprehensive security solution, reduce risk and all that.
And cut down on alert fatigue. That's a big pain point for security teams.
For sure. But I wonder how well this will work. Silence didn't exactly thrive under BlackBerry.
Maybe Arctic Wolf sees something others didn't. Or maybe they got a steal. Who knows?
Time will tell, I guess. But for BlackBerry, it feels like they're moving away from cybersecurity and focusing on their secure communication stuff.
Yeah, maybe they're cutting their losses.
Could be. Now, Citrix, they've issued a warning about password spraying attacks.
Oh yeah, those are nasty, targeting their NetScaler and NetScaler gateway appliances.
And it's following a similar pattern to those attacks on Cisco and Fortinet earlier this year.
Is this a new trend we're seeing?
It's worrying, for sure. Password spraying is different from brute force attacks.
How so?
Instead of trying tons of passwords on one account, they use a few common passwords across lots of accounts. It's about overwhelming the system.
Ah, I see, and causing disruption.
Exactly. Citrix is recommending multi-factor authentication, blocking bad IPs, log rotation, all that.
That should be standard practice anyway.
Totally agree. The fact that we're still seeing these attacks is concerning.
Shows a lack of basic security hygiene.
Yep. Multi-factor authentication especially, that should be mandatory everywhere.
All right, some good news now. Keep It got a nice chunk of funding.
Oh yeah, $50 million. That's awesome.
They're a Danish company specializing in SaaS backup. Sounds pretty useful.
It is. They're all about simplifying data backup for stuff like Microsoft 365, Salesforce, Google Workspace.
Makes sense. Everyone's using those tools these days.
Exactly. This funding will help them grow and innovate, which is good news, especially with everyone relying on the cloud.
True, but even with the best backups, breaches still happen.
Right. Unfortunately, look at Connect and Call.
Oh yeah, that patient communication tool, they got hit hard.
Over 900,000 people impacted. That's a big one.
And get this, the attacker was in their systems for months, February to May.
Wow, that's a long time to go undetected.
They got medical records, dates of birth, social security numbers, the works.
This raises some serious questions about their security. How could this happen for so long?
They've taken the platform offline now, of course, but the damage is done.
It is. It's a reminder that even healthcare isn't immune to these attacks, and the impact can be huge.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about that malvertising campaign, deception ads.
Oh man, that's nasty. Guardia Labs uncovered that one. It's huge.
Over 3,000 compromised websites funneling traffic. Yikes.
They're using fake CAP PTCH pages to trick people into running malicious code.
Fake cap PCHAs. That's clever.
It is. It's exploiting something people are used to doing. They don't even think twice.
Right, and then bam, they're infected.
They're running base 64 encoded PowerShell scripts, deploying information stealers like Luma.
Luma again, seems like that's making the rounds.
It is. It's nasty stuff. And this whole campaign was running through the Monotag ad network.
Seriously. So they were reaching tons of people.
Over 1 million impressions per day. That's insane.
1 million. Wow, that's a lot of potential victims.
It is. Monotag has shut down 200 bad accounts, but it shows how attackers are using ad networks to spread their stuff.
It's scary. You got to be so careful what you click on these days.
You do. And then there's that AI-powered scam, Nomani.
Yeah, I saw that. It's crazy how they're using AI.
It's a whole new level of sophistication. They're using social media ads, fake endorsements, even AI-generated videos of
This
celebrities.
is wild. They're preying on people's desires, like wanting to get rich quick.
Exactly, and using these familiar faces to build trust.
It's a toxic combination.
It is. ESET, they've been tracking Nomani. They say they're impersonating big brands and news outlets for phishing.
So it's multi-layered. First, they lure you in with promises, then they steal your data, then they pressure you into loans and investments.
It's scary how convincing they can be.
And there's some Russian language stuff in there. Makes you wonder who's behind it all.
Definitely raises some red flags. The point is, people need to be hyper aware, verify everything, don't trust anything that seems too good to be true.
Absolutely. Critical thinking is key.
It is. All right, let's talk about this vulnerability in biomedical imaging tools.
Oh, yeah, that one's scary. CVE 2024-42845. It's a remote code execution flaw.
RCE, that's one of the worst kinds. It means attackers can run any code they want on those systems.
And these are tools that process DICOM files. Hospitals and clinics use those all the time.
Exactly. So the potential impact is huge. They found this flaw in Python's evil function.
Python. So this isn't just about medical software. It's about how software is built in general.
That's right. A seemingly harmless feature can become a huge vulnerability depending on the context.
That's scary. And attackers can exploit this by messing with DICOM metadata. They don't even need direct access.
It's a reminder that security needs to be baked into everything, from the design to the code.
Absolutely. Thankfully, there's a patch for this one, but it shows how vulnerable healthcare IT can be.
And how important patching is. We can't afford to be complacent.
Speaking of healthcare, AE Industrial Partners, they bought Paragon, the Israeli spyware company.
Wow, that's a big deal. 450, 500 million, maybe even $900 million.
That's a lot of money for spyware.
It is. Paragon is known for graphite. They're spyware that can even get data from encrypted apps like Signal and WhatsApp.
That's powerful stuff and controversial, but they've managed to get contracts with IC and the DEA.
Unlike NSO Group, they're another Israeli spyware company that got into some hot water.
Yeah, this acquisition raises some ethical questions for sure. Are these tools being used responsibly?
It's a tough one. Law enforcement needs tools to fight crime, but there's always a risk of abuse.
We need strong oversight and clear regulations, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And speaking of crackdowns, Russia banned Viber.
Viber, what for?
They claim it's involved in terrorism, drug trafficking, all that, but...
Sounds like an excuse to control information.
It does, doesn't it? This is just the latest move in their crackdown on foreign tech companies. They've already gone after Google, YouTube, Signal.
This is affecting 17 million Viber users in Russia, pushing them further toward digital isolation.
Yeah, this is part of their RuNet project, creating their own internet, basically.
Some experts think this is a test. They might go after WhatsApp and Telegram next.
It's a worrying trend, controlling what people can see and say online.
Absolutely. It undermines freedom of information and access to communication.
It's a reminder that cybersecurity is about more than just protecting data. It's about protecting our rights and freedoms.
Now, remember that Amnesty report about NoviSpy in Serbia?
Oh yeah, that one's getting worse.
They found evidence suggesting Serbian authorities are using Cellebrite's phone unlocking software alongside NoviSpy.
So it's not just a tool for law enforcement, it's being used for surveillance.
And not just any surveillance, targeting journalists and activists. This is serious.
It is. Victims are saying their phones were tampered with during police detentions. That's how they got infected with NoviSpy.
Amnesty even traced the spyware's command servers back to Serbian security forces.
That's damning evidence. It suggests a systemic abuse of surveillance technology.
Cellebrite says they'll investigate, but it casts a shadow over their whole operation.
It does. Are they knowingly enabling these abuses? Or are their tools being misused without their knowledge?
Either way, it's a bad look. The lack of transparency in the spyware industry is a major problem.
Absolutely. We need stricter regulations and more accountability.
This is about protecting people's privacy and human rights. It's bigger than just data security.
It's about fundamental freedoms.
All right, some positive news to end on. Dell and Microsoft are teaming up.
Oh yeah, that's a big partnership.
They're working on boosting AI adoption and strengthening cybersecurity in multi-cloud environments.
That's a big goal. Lots of potential there.
They're launching Dell Apex File Storage for Azure. It's a managed cloud storage solution.
Sounds complicated.
It is, but basically it makes it easier to deploy AI workloads.
Makes sense. AI needs a lot of storage and processing power.
They're also providing support for Azure AI and some cool security tools, like AI-powered cyber recovery systems.
So they're covering all the bases.
It's a multifaceted approach. They want to make it easier to use AI across Microsoft's platforms, like Copilot Studio and Azure AI services.
And at the same time, they're strengthening zero-trust security protocols.
It's a smart move. Dell knows their hardware and infrastructure. Microsoft is the cloud king.
This partnership could really shape how businesses adopt AI in a secure way.
That's the key, doing it securely. Because AI can be a double-edged sword when it comes to cybersecurity.
Absolutely. It can be used to defend and attack.
We need to be smart about how we develop and use it.
For sure. We're just scratching the surface here.
That's a good chunk of the big cybersecurity news from December 15th. But we've got more to cover, so stay with us.
You know, we were talking about those attacks targeting YouTube creators. That whole thing is getting really sophisticated.
It is. They're really stepping up their game, impersonating brands, making these fake collaboration offers that look totally legit.
Yeah. Exactly. It's not just some shoddy email anymore. They're using stolen brand assets, making them look super professional, preying on that desire for exposure, you know?
That's what makes it so dangerous. Creators are always looking for those partnerships. They might not think twice.
And it goes beyond just stealing logins. They're using this malware, Luma Stealer. It can take everything: financial info, intellectual property, even access to crypto wallets.
That's terrifying, crypto wallets.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, it's bad. And this malware is designed to be sneaky. It uses obfuscation to avoid antivirus. It can even mess with your clipboard, redirecting your crypto transactions to the attackers.
That's insane. I didn't even know that was possible.
It's a whole new level of sophistication we're seeing. Even experienced users could fall for this.
And they're specifically targeting YouTube creators, so it's not just random people.
It's a shift. Influencer networks are becoming a prime target. They're valuable not just for data, but for their reach, their influence.
It's about hijacking their reputation, using it for something malicious.
Exactly. It's a whole new game. Creators need to be super careful, verifying every collaboration request, checking every link, multi-factor authentication everywhere.
No more clicking without thinking.
Nope. Not anymore. The stakes are too high. You got to be proactive, aware, have those defenses in place.
It's a constant arms race. Those cybersecurity experts we talked to, they were really concerned about outdated systems and bad security habits.
It's frustrating. We're still seeing exploits like Eternal Blue working years after it was discovered because people aren't patching their systems.
It's not just patching. It's about the whole network architecture, poor segmentation.
Exactly. One weak link, one forgotten server can be all it takes for an attacker to get in and move laterally.
And then they have access to everything. It's like leaving the front door wide open.
And speaking of open doors, they were really worried about people using insecure communication channels like WhatsApp for sensitive conversations.
Yeah, I can see why it's convenient, but it's not exactly secure.
No, not when you're talking about confidential information. You need proper encryption, security features that those platforms just don't have.
Especially now with deepfakes. Imagine getting a call from your CEO asking for money. But it's not really them, it's a deepfake.
It's scary how realistic they're getting. Distinguishing real from fake is becoming a nightmare.
The takeaway here is that security needs to be multi-layered. You need the tech, the monitoring, the patching, but you also need awareness, education.
Absolutely. It's about building a culture of security where everyone understands the risks and takes responsibility.
Okay, so we talked about the FDA's new cybersecurity rules for medical devices earlier. Those were a good step.
They were, but compliance is still a challenge.
Yeah, those software bills of materials, the SBOMs, they're great for transparency.
In theory, but the problem is there's no standard format. So it's like trying to put together a puzzle with pieces from different sets.
That makes it really hard for healthcare organizations to analyze those SBOMs and actually do something with them.
And then you've got legacy devices. Some of them can't even support modern security features.
It's a mess, but at least the FDA is trying.
They are. They're working on streamlining the SBMOM review process and giving clearer guidance to manufacturers.
And they're focused on making sure devices are patchable. That's huge.
It is. You got to be able to update those things. Otherwise, they're just sitting ducks.
It's a big problem, but it's good that they're taking it seriously.
Absolutely. It's about patient safety, ultimately. That's what's at stake.
So back to Russia banning Viber. I mean, they're saying it's for security, but it feels like censorship.
It does, doesn't it? Those accusations of terrorism, illegal activities, it all sounds a bit flimsy.
It's about control, controlling the narrative, stifling dissent.
They've already gone after Google, YouTube, Signal. It's a clear pattern.
This is digital authoritarianism in action, plain and simple.
It's happening all over the world. Governments trying to control the internet.
It's worrying. It's not just about inconvenience. It's about fundamental rights.
Freedom of information, freedom of expression, those are being eroded.
It's a reminder that cybersecurity is about more than just protecting data. It's about protecting our freedoms.
It's about fighting for a free and open internet, a free and open society.
And remember, NoviSpy. That's spyware targeting journalists and activists in Serbia.
Oh, yeah, that's a bad one, and it just keeps getting worse.
Amnesty International is saying that Cellebrite's technology is being used alongside NoviSpy.
So that means it's not just law enforcement using it, it's being used for targeted surveillance.
And it's not just any surveillance. It's aimed at silencing dissent, suppressing free speech.
It's about control, plain and simple, and it's happening with the help of a company that claims to be helping law enforcement.
It's a slippery slope. Once you start using these tools for this kind of thing, where do you draw the line?
Exactly. And the lack of transparency in the spyware industry makes it even worse.
We need more accountability, stricter regulations. We can't let this continue.
Absolutely. This is about human rights. People's lives are being affected.
Cellebrite says they'll investigate, but that's not enough. We need real change.
We need to demand better from the companies that make these tools, from the governments that use them.
And speaking of changing the game, Nomani, that AI-powered scam, it's a whole new level.
It is. They're using AI to create these hyper-realistic scams that are almost impossible to detect.
AI-generated videos of celebrities, fake endorsements. It's all so convincing.
It preys on people's desires, their hopes, their dreams.
It's insidious, and the fact that they're targeting the investment space, that's smart.
It is. People are more likely to let their guard down when there's money involved.
It's a recipe for disaster. We need to educate people about these scams, how to spot them, how to protect themselves.
Absolutely. Awareness is key, but it's also about critical thinking, not believing everything you see online.
Especially when it comes to financial promises. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Right. Always double check, do your research, don't let greed cloud your judgment.
Okay, so LKQ Corporation, the auto parts giant, they got hit pretty hard.
Yeah, they're still not saying exactly what happened, but it disrupted their Canadian operations for weeks.
And they're relying on cyber insurance to cover the costs.
That's the standard response these days, but insurance isn't a magic bullet.
It doesn't cover everything, like the reputational damage, the lost trust.
And the disruption to their supply chain, that's going to have a ripple effect.
It's a reminder that even big companies with resources can be vulnerable.
It can happen to anyone, and the impact can be huge.
Now, the U.S. Federal Cybersecurity Grant Program, that's been a lifeline for a lot of state and local governments.
It has. It's helped them improve their security posture, get the tools and training they need.
But it's set to expire in 2025, and that's a big concern.
It is. A lot of these governments rely on that funding. Without it, they're going to be scrambling.
They might have to cut corners, leave vulnerabilities unpatched. It's a recipe for disaster.
It's a tough situation. Cybersecurity costs money, and not everyone has it.
We need to prioritize this, make sure these governments have the resources they need to protect themselves and their citizens.
Absolutely. It's a matter of national security, really.
And it's not just a U.S. problem. This is global.
Cybersecurity is a global issue. We need international cooperation, information sharing.
We can't do this alone. We need to work together, share best practices, help each other out.
And speaking of working together, Dell and Microsoft teaming up, that's a good sign.
It is. They're combining their strengths to tackle some big challenges, AI adoption, multi-cloud security.
Their new Dell Apex file storage for Azure, that's a big deal for businesses wanting to use AI.
It makes it easier to manage all that data, the storage, the processing power.
And they're focusing on zero trust security, which is essential these days.
The old perimeter-based security model is dead. We need to assume that every user, every device, is potentially compromised.
Verify everything, monitor constantly, limit the damage if something does happen.
It's a more proactive, dynamic approach that fits with how the world works now.
And Dell and Microsoft working together on this, that's a powerful combination.
They have the expertise, the resources to really make a difference.
It's a good example of what's possible when companies collaborate.
And it highlights the need for continuous innovation. We can't afford to stand still.
The attackers are always evolving. We need to stay ahead of the curve.
All right, so we've talked about technology, but let's not forget about the human factor.
That's crucial. Technology is only part of the equation.
Human error, negligence, lack of awareness, these are all huge contributors to cyber incidents.
And that's why education is so important. We need to empower people to make better decisions.
Teach them how to spot phishing attacks, avoid suspicious links, create strong passwords.
And recognize social engineering tactics. Those are getting really sophisticated.
It's about building a culture of security awareness where everyone understands the risks and takes responsibility.
That's the key. It's not just the IT department's job. It's everyone's job.
From the CEO down to the intern, Everyone needs to be on board.
And it's not just about technical skills, it's about critical thinking.
In this age of disinformation and deepfakes, you can't believe everything you see online.
You need to question sources, verify information, be skeptical.
We need to teach people how to navigate the digital world safely, responsibly.
And that starts with education, teaching kids about cybersecurity in school.
It's an investment in the future. We need to prepare them for the challenges ahead.
Absolutely. The challenges are real, but they're not insurmountable.
By working together, being proactive, we can build a more secure digital world.
For ourselves and for future generations, it's worth fighting for.
Wow, we've covered a lot today.
We have. It's been a marathon, zero-day exploits, ransomware, industry shakeups, even international politics. It's all connected.
It is. Cybersecurity is everywhere these days.
And it's constantly changing, but, there are some key takeaways, some things we've seen over and over again.
Yeah, like being proactive. We can't just sit and wait for something to happen.
Exactly. We got to be thinking ahead, anticipating threats, building those defenses before the attack hits.
And not just relying on technology. It's about people and processes, too.
Right. You got to have a layered approach, strong tech, a culture of security awareness, and a plan for when things go wrong.
Because they will go wrong. It's not a matter of if, but when.
And you got to be ready for the stuff you don't even know about, those zero-day exploits, those new attacks that haven't even been invented yet.
Being proactive is key. And collaboration is huge, too. We've seen that time and again.
It's essential. Cybersecurity is not a solo mission. We need to work together, share information, share resources.
Across industries, across governments, across borders, it's a global problem.
And it needs a global solution. No one can do this alone. We got to break down those silos, share those best practices, learn from each other.
The Dell and Microsoft partnership, that's a good example. Two industry giants coming together to tackle some big challenges.
It's a good sign, combining their strengths, their expertise to come up with solutions that benefit everyone.
And we need more of that, more collaboration, more innovation, because the attackers are not standing still.
They're not. They're constantly evolving, finding new ways to exploit, new ways to attack.
So we got to stay ahead of the curve, invest in research, invest in development, find those new defenses.
And never forget the human factor. Technology is important, but it's people who make the decisions, people who make the mistakes.
Human error is still a huge problem. Negligence, lack of awareness, those are all vulnerabilities.
And that's why education is so important. Training, awareness campaigns, it's all about empowering people.
To make better decisions, to identify threats, to understand the risks, and to take responsibility.
It's everyone's responsibility, not just the IT department. It's the CEO, the intern, everyone in between.
And it's not just technical skills either. It's critical thinking, it's skepticism, it's knowing how to navigate this digital world safely.
In this age of disinformation and deepfakes, you gotta be careful. You gotta question everything you see online.
Verify sources, double-check information. Don't fall for those scams, those manipulation tactics.
We need to teach people how to be discerning, how to think critically, how to protect themselves.
And that starts with education, in schools, in the workplace, everywhere.
It's an investment in the future. And it's worth it. The challenges are real, but we can overcome them.
By working together, by staying informed, by being proactive, by empowering people.
We can build a more secure digital world for ourselves, for our children, for everyone.
That's what it's all about. Ultimately, protecting people, protecting our future.
Cybersecurity is not just about data. It's about our lives, our freedoms, our society.
That's our deep dive for December 15th, 2024. A lot to think about, but remember,
knowledge is power. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and stay safe out there.
And as always, Cybersecurity HQ is your go-to source for all things cybersecurity jobs, reports, news, and our weekly newsletter, read by over 70,000 professionals.
We're here to help you navigate this complex world, stay ahead of the threats, and build a more secure future.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.